This is the Real Change Wilmington Podcast, episode 81, the local team at National Christian Foundation with our guests today, Tom Dreyer and Dwight Montgomery.
I think the big thing is that people aren't giving to NCF, they're giving through us. So they're still going to be able to support those charities that they love. So that money can stay here in Wilmington if that's where they want it to go. But we're just that conduit to help them do what's best for what they've been entrusted with.
What is going on, everyone? This is your host of the Real Change Wilmington podcast, Dustin Pierce. Real Change is a positive, constructive, and lighthearted source of local news, events, and resources. On our podcast, we interview leaders of local organizations to help squash rumors and encourage a greater sense of pride in our community. We have a great episode for you today with our guests, Tom Dreyer and Dwight Montgomery, who are with the National Christian Foundation. Folks in Wilmington may recognize Tom as the previous business development director over at Ohio Living Cape May. Tom also served on the board for the Wilmington-Clinton County Chamber of Commerce, and Dwight is based in Central Ohio and has a lot of ties to my old friends when I lived in Columbus. Since 1982, the National Christian Foundation has helped facilitate more than $25 billion in charitable grants to over 90,000 ministries and nonprofits worldwide. What makes the National Christian Foundation unique is that they help people get the most out of their local charitable givings by setting up a donor-advised fund. The foundation also helps people donate non-cash assets, such as stocks, real estate, and even business interests, in a way that can help people reduce their capital gain taxes so that more of their giving goes towards local charities and not taxes. It's very interesting stuff, and I'm glad to finally have Tom on the podcast because he is such an advocate for our community, and I'm excited for us all to learn about his new venture with National Christian Foundation. With that, let's bring in our guest and get this podcast started. Tom Dreyer and Dwight Montgomery, welcome to the Real Change Wilmington podcast. Tom, you're currently the VP of Southwest Ohio.
I am, yes.
And Dwight, you're the president of the whole thing.
Just NCF Ohio.
Okay, the Ohio
Yes.
piece of it.
Yes, sir.
Typically, we get into your guys' background before we get into the organization, but also typically people we interview are either living in or working in Wilmington. Tom and Dwight, you do neither, but Tom, you've been in the community for a while with Cape May and the Chamber of Commerce. And what else were you involved with while you were here?
Oh gosh, the only Alzheimer's support group in the county, I was the facilitator for. So yes, I was the director of business development at Cape May, and also still serve on the chamber board.
So tell us about your background.
My background, well, Cincinnati raised, California born.
Okay.
So I was an Army brat growing up. So our last couple of stints were in Germany and then North Carolina, and then moved back here when I was about 4, back here meaning Cincinnati.
When you're 4 years old?
Yeah.
So born in California, not really experiencing that much. Okay.
No. But I did speak German before I spoke English.
Really?
So yeah, don't remember any of it.
Ah, that's a bummer.
I know.
So tell us about your upbringing, education. What did you go to school at?
Sure. Parochial schools for most of my life. Guardian Angels in Mount Washington, which is on the east side of Cincinnati. And then McNicholas High School, right across the street from Guardian Angels in Cincinnati. Both Catholic schools.
Nice. Did you go to college?
I did. University of Cincinnati, business management degree.
And then what was your career like before Cape May?
Oh, anywhere from medical sales, oxygen sales. Owned a couple of restaurants down in the Cincinnati area as well.
You did?
Yeah, so very well-rounded.
Okay.
Yeah.
What sparked your interest in sales and business development?
It's one of those things. God just led me where he wanted me to go, and I tried to listen. Didn't listen every time he talked to me.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it got me where I am now.
What were your restaurants that you had in Cincinnati?
There was one back in the 90s, more of a bar, college bar.
Okay. There's money in that. That's good.
Yeah.
Business.
Yeah. It was one of the busiest bars on the east side of town. And then a short stint right down the road from now on, it was a family pub style.
Did you start those from scratch or just purchase existing?
It's existing.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And then you're married, you have kids. How did you meet your wife?
We had some mutual friends. So we've been married going on 13 years. I have 2 older sons, adult sons from a previous marriage, 27 and 25. 27-year-old is married, but no grandkids yet. But my youngest is a 7-year-old daughter. She's wonderful, keeping me young.
And you live in Loveland currently. Is she in Loveland schools?
She goes to Miami Valley Christian Academy, which is a new town, about a half an hour drive from where we are.
What are some of your guys' hobbies as a family?
Oh my gosh. Her favorite thing is probably riding the large roller coasters at Kings Island. We can't keep her off.
Like in Kittyland or the actual?
Yeah, the actual, she loves the
She's
beast.
old enough for that? Okay.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
cool.
old enough and tall enough. So
Very cool. Last question. What was a defining moment of your life that's helped make you who you are or shape your values and personality?
yeah, I think the upbringing in parochial schools, which led to participation in sports, taught me a competitive advantage.
Hmm.
But I think final shaping, I think, was when we adopted our little girl. We were able to adopt her in the delivery room out in Wichita. So it was one of the most fantastic, miraculous things I've ever experienced.
Hmm. Can I ask you like how that came about?
Yeah.
How did you find this family? How did you decide to adopt?
We had gone through all of the foster to adopt programs and were real close to being certified. And since my wife runs her own preschool out of the house, the state said that we couldn't qualify to foster. So we looked elsewhere and found faithful adoption consultants based in Atlanta. And they were incredible to work with. They got us matched really quick, matched with a family in Wichita. And here we are.
Good for you.
Yeah, and it's been great.
Sure, it's a blessing for her too.
Yeah, more so for us.
Well, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Dwight.
Yes.
Tell us about your background growing up. Where are you from?
Columbus originally, Upper Arlington. It's where I grew up. Pretty much K through 12. I was in the Arlington schools, and then my undergrad was Ohio State, and Bowling Green, my master's. And so that kind of led me on my first part of my career path, and back in Columbus now, living in Dublin.
Did you ever venture a little outside of Columbus, Central Ohio area?
Well, my first 10 years during college and out of college, I was a high school and college football coach. So I moved from Upper Arlington to campus to Bexley to Newark to Ada, Ohio. So it just kept getting smaller as I went. But that's what then led me back to Columbus.
So what was your master's degree in?
Administration.
And were you a full-time coach? That was your main job?
I was, yeah. That was all I was doing, was coaching football.
And then are you married and do you have kids?
Married, 3 kids, 25, 33, 36.
Yeah.
My need for memory care sometimes catches up with me.
That's why you're Tom.
Yeah, I'm like,
how did you meet your wife? What's the story there?
My second career, I was a financial advisor, and I refer to her as the best referral I ever got, because some clients of mine suggested that she come see me, and instead of getting a client out of it, I got a wife out of it. So It worked out pretty good.
Did she come with a bunch of money to manage?
She didn't come with a bunch of money to manage. But,
okay.
She came with an intent to figure out how to do it better. So that was appealing to me as well.
And what are some of your guys' hobbies as a family?
Fishing, and fishing. We like to go fishing a lot. We do a lot up in Michigan, Alaska.
Oh, wow.
So whatever we get along with. Doesn't happen enough, but it happens.
What's your favorite spots to fish? Like, do you like to fish off the side of the bank or on a boat?
Well, when we're in Alaska, we do both.
Okay.
We do a lot of, we're wading, doing a lot of river fishing, just wherever we get on them.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty. I've been going up there since 2008. We go up every year.
Do you fish in the ice then? Like, just cut a hole in the ice and?
No. We don't go in the cold. We're there July, August, September, depending on what we want to catch. Now, I've had it cold up there. In fact, the coldest I've ever had it in July is 25, but the hottest I've ever had it in July is 97. So you just don't know what you're in for. It's a very simple phrase. There's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothes. So just pack them, be ready to go.
What's the biggest fish or coolest fish you've caught?
Up there, the biggest was probably a little over 50 pounds, king salmon. We fish for a lot of sockeye, king salmon, rainbow trout, but 50 is probably about up there at the top side.
Do you catch and release or do you cook them?
Both. It's not a fishing trip. It's a catching trip. So you catch more fish than you can either eat or bring home.
That's a fun hobby.
It's great. We love it.
So I'll ask you the same question that I asked Tom. What is a defining moment of your life that's helped to make you who you are or shape your values and personality?
I would say I got three of them, maybe in kind of a quick order. I would say recognizing Jesus as my savior would be my first, although that was a path that, for many, that sanctification process kind of comes and goes, ebbs and flows a little bit. But once you get that figured out, second, I would say was meeting my wife. It certainly shapes a lot of what we're doing today. Had an opportunity to become very good friends with a guy named Ron Blue. Ron Blue is a gentleman who speaks a lot into the biblical generosity space and has become quite a mentor to me. So those are probably three things that jump out at me very quickly.
You said your relationship with Jesus ebbed and flowed, the sanctification process did. What was like the initial?
Well, I accepted Jesus as a junior in high school at Upper Arlington, went to Ohio State, left Jesus back at Upper Arlington. As a lot of college people might tend to do. But, as I got older and more mature, I knew he never left me, even though I maybe kind of left him. And so, I'm blessed that his grace is far greater than anything I can get my arms around.
Very cool. You ready to talk about the National Christian Foundation?
Sure.
So how did you get involved?
So during my career as a financial advisor, I had a practice in Columbus for a number of years, but became acquainted with an organization called Kingdom Advisors, which was actually started by Ron Blue. That's an organization for the financial advisor who wants the intersection of faith and finance in their practice, as well as in their life. And got to know Ron, and he and I joke about it. I tell him it's all his fault, right? Because I had a practice and ended up learning things a little differently than what the world teaches. And it's a big part of what sets me here today. So I had felt called out of my financial advisory practice. And in fact, I sold it in 2012. And I continued to serve clients because I knew something was next, but I didn't know what it was. And then 2015, they were wanting to NCF Ohio had kind of been in hibernation a little bit. And so they had wanted to bring that back to fruition. And so I'd gotten to know the president of NCF at the time, a gentleman named David Wills, and then Ron Blue and a gentleman over in Indiana. And they all said, why don't you check with Dwight and see if he's interested? And long story short, that's kind of how that came to be. So that was back in 15 and 16 when we were having that conversation. And then we formally got things moving in 2017.
So was Ron Blue part of the National Christian Foundation also?
Ron Blue is actually one of the founders of NCF.
Okay.
Back in 1982, Ron was the accountant. A gentleman named Terry Parker was the attorney, and a gentleman named Larry Burkett, who was actually the financial advisor. And the three of them kind of studied tax law and said, maybe there's a better way to help people with their giving strategies. And so they were helped pioneer and create this concept of a donor advised fund, which is one of the tools that we use. And thus, that was kind of the birth of NCF on a national basis back in 82.
So Ron Blue had a separate business, Kingdom Investments. Was that just like a financial
Actually,
advice?
Kingdom Advisors came after. Right? He started a very large regional CPA firm, Blue and Company. Ronald Blue Trust is a very large, what's called a registered investment advisory firm, which is the financial advisors. So Ron's actually started a number of things over the years, NCF being one of them.
So we'll unpack that more in a second.
Sure.
Tom, how did you get involved?
Wow. Again, it was another one of those God calling moments. My phone rang one day, and it was a recruiter. And I don't remember the name of the recruiting group that it was, but I went ahead and answered it. And about 20 minutes into the conversation, I went from, I don't know anything about foundation work to, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I answered this phone call. It's God talking again. So about 6 months of interviews and talking with Dwight and some other people on the national team. Here I am as I think it's one of the best decisions, best phone calls I ever answered. But I always try to surround myself with good, great people.
Mm-hmm.
And I was at my previous job, I was surrounded by great people, but even more so now. Not just the people that I work with, but the people that I come in contact with on a daily basis. Just fantastic, God-loving people.
So, Dwight, do you want to tell us a little bit about how the National Christian Foundation works?
Sure. In its simplest form, we help families do what I call move the freight to the kingdom. Now, what's the freight? Might be cash. Maybe it's the publicly traded marketable security like a stock, a mutual fund, an exchange-traded fund. Most of what people do, they know how to write a check for charitable work, and they get a deduction, for the tax purpose. But on average, only about 10% of what we've been entrusted sits in our checkbook. But about 80% of all the giving being done around the country comes from that 10%. So what we do is we come alongside a family to help them develop a giving strategy that allows them to be more effective and more efficient with their giving when they consider all of the strategies that Congress has approved to utilize not only cash, but assets that sit on our balance sheet as well. So when I say assets on the balance sheet, sometimes somebody has a second home and they're giving that away for charity. Maybe they have rental property. Maybe they have a business interest. Any kind of business, whether it's a privately held or the publicly traded. Privately held S corporations or the C corps or the LLCs or the partnerships, no matter how they're structured, people find that there's actually ways to leverage those assets, whether they're selling it or not, for greater charitable impact. And when I say greater impact, it's really about, again, the Congress-approved strategies that help us squeeze the taxes out of these assets so that there's more for the charitable intent, more for the charitable giving, ultimately more for the kingdom. And so last year we helped people give about $3 billion. Two of that was cash and publicly traded securities. The other $1 billion was these assets. Some of the other assets we've helped people leverage would be things like silver bars, airplanes, grain, pigs. I mean, you find an asset, there's typically a way that you can leverage that very tax efficiently for charitable intent. As a side note, the pig strategy, somebody asked me if we had to run them off the cliff first before we gave them away. I said, no demon possession. They were clean. Mm-hmm. So, one of the Bible stories.
Joke, yeah.
Yes.
You said that you can help leverage assets without even selling them. So can you give us an example of how that works?
Yeah, a lot of times when people have an income-producing asset, and they're already giving money away anyway, so they're giving the cash away, but oftentimes they will give some or part, or maybe all. It doesn't require an entire gift of the whole asset. They gift part of that into National Christian Foundation, into what we call a donor-advised fund. And a donor-advised fund, when they put some or part or all of that asset in, they get a tax deduction just as if they'd written a check for the fair market value of that asset. Then what happens is because we are a charity, oftentimes the income being produced by that business or real estate, let's say, we either pay no income tax on that or a lot less. And so that's kind of the second pickup. They get the deduction for gifting part of the asset to NCF. And then the second tax pickup is either the avoidance of, legally, by the way, again, all Congress-approved strategies, where either that profit or that income distribution isn't taxed or taxed lower, which means ultimately then there's more in this donor-advised fund, which we refer to as the charitable checkbook. Mm-hmm. That they can then grant that money out to the organizations that they've been called to support. And right now we've got about 1,000 different, give or take, business interests, real estate interests, worth about $6 billion that people gave, and we're holding it for them with the intent of using that income for charitable purpose.
So is it like if you had a for-profit business, let's say, like I think you mentioned a storage facility last time, or an office building that generated income, you could essentially turn that asset into a nonprofit and then give the money to charity?
Well, in essence, yes. It still stays a nonprofit, but because we're a charitable shareholder, so let's just give you an example of something we've done for somebody. These folks had a commercial real estate building. It was worth about $2.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
There were two owners, 50-50. One of the owners gave half of their half to their donor advised fund at NCF. So now there's three owners. One owner still had his 50%. The other owner kept 25%, and then in his donor advised fund was 25%. As the profits were distributed pro rata, 50% went one to the one owner, 25% to the other owner, 25% into the donor advised fund.
Mm-hmm.
The 25% to the donor advised fund, because this was passive income from real estate, and passive income means it's not a management company or something like that, but you get passive income off of rental properties as an example. And so that wasn't taxed inside of the donor advised fund at NCF. And so then what that individual did was take that money and grant it out to the churches and the charities. Mm-hmm. Literally a tax-free transaction on that portion.
So they're not getting that money back. They're just able to use that money for their giving purposes, decide where they want to give it to.
And one of the important decisions somebody's made is that they either want a more tax-efficient way for their charitable giving, or they've just decided they don't need all of that asset. Yeah. It's surprising and not surprising when somebody has, what I call an upside-down worldview. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is more of a kingdom lens on what they've been entrusted than, hey, it's all mine and I got to build as big a barn for myself as possible.
It seems wise too, because if you're going to give the money to a charity anyways, why not give it all to them instead of giving 30% for taxes in the government? It just kind of.
Well, and that's really what we call the gift economics. At some point, when we help people flush these ideas out, mm-hmm. They always have an intent to do more, right? Which is great. But let's do the math to say, does it make sense? In other words, are you better giving cash based on your situation, or are there assets that you could more tax efficiently leverage, again, under the current laws that we've been provided, so that there in fact is more for the charitable intent?
I like how you continuously bring back up that this is a legal strategy. It's not some shady thing. So before we go further, how does NCF get paid, or how do you guys make this sustainable for, obviously you guys have employees?
Well, as a 501c3 organization ourselves, mm-hmm. so we file a 990, right? But we don't pay taxes on that. And so typically most donor advised funds, their revenue stream comes from the administrative fee that's applied to the donor advised fund to operate it, if you will. Most donor advised funds have some type of an administrative fee. And so it's the revenue from that allows us to pay the bills, if you will. And one thing about, the National Christian Foundation is a lot of people are attracted to us because they want that equal yoked, like-minded conversation first and foremost, because we won't ever be the least expensive donor advised fund platform out there, but we're also never the most expensive. But the value prop is that they want that biblical worldview in terms of how they're managing their charitable strategies.
Is the advisory fee variable based on the client, or is it a set fee?
It's established fee it's basically a volume, like most, the more you have, the lower the number. When you bake that into the tax savings and everything, it's really it's a cost, but it's not a cost because, it's otherwise people aren't leveraging these strategies, which means it's probably costing them more taxes.
That's what I was wondering. So if the taxes, let's say, I assume like around 30% or so.
Well, it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
Because everybody's in a very different bracket.
Mm-hmm. What's the highest percentage in the lowest bracket, I guess? That makes sense.
The highest.
If someone's coming in with the least amount of assets.
It starts at 0.9 and goes down from there.
0.9 is pretty low.
Yeah. I kind of refer to it as a broken form of revenue. One thing that makes us a little different is we try to encourage people to send this money out the door. In other words, it's not doing anybody any good sitting in the donor advised fund. I got a tax break on it when I put it in, but if I just hold it there, well, all I've done is, build another barn somewhere else and gotten a tax squeeze out of it. So, that's a big part of what we're trying to do too, is get that money out to the churches and the charities who need that type of asset to run, the work that they've been called to do.
I feel like the more I'm talking about this with you and we talked last time, I'm understanding it more. But just so if I'm understanding it and people listening aren't understanding it, Tom, do you want to add anything?
I say the biggest thing, if you have questions or are interested in this, contact us and we will walk you through it.
It's most people aren't familiar with, and we know mathematically, if 80% of all the giving being done is coming from the 10% in cash, that means only 20% of all the giving that's coming is coming from the 90% that's my house, my car, my IRA, my 401k, my business, my real estate, my life insurance policy. I mean, you can go on and on and on. And so I pretty much know that 80% of the people that we meet, no one has ever shared this concept of how they can leverage some of these assets. So to your point, it's not uncommon that people go, I never heard of this. And often no one simply shared it with them. And that's part of our objective, is just to share the fact that there's other strategies that people can consider. Now, if it's all about me, I'm not giving anything away, right? I'll pay the tax, put it all in my pocket. But there's just so many people out there that have a desire to be generous, because we've been called to be generous, right? And we've been told that it's better to give than to receive. We've been told to store up treasures for yourselves in heaven. Well, we're not going to figure that one all out today, but, that's inherent in all of us as some type of generous bone in our body, if you will.
I guess I'm wondering, who is your main type of client? Because some people maybe are in a position they want to be generous, but they don't have the means or to figure this all out and not in a position to give an asset away. How would you talk to them?
Well, it's interesting with the donor advised fund. And again, as we refer to it as either a giving fund or the charitable checkbook, we all have a checkbook that we run our household finances out of. We have, if we own a business or something, we have a separate checking account for our business. Well, this donor advised fund really becomes the separate checkbook for my generosity, for my giving. And so one of the things I'd say there is for a lot of folks, just having that separate point of intentional strategy, whether they're putting in cash only, because we have a lot of people that just put cash in, but they like the fact that it's segregating and giving them an emphasis on how they're thinking about what they're doing with what we would typically hear is their tithes and their offerings, right? Well, they like the fact that it's doing the accounting for them. They have this historical record of everything that's come in and everything that's gone out. They don't have to do it. It's all right there. So I bring that up because the basics of the charitable checkbook, right, the donor advised fund, fit for everybody. Now, if I'm only giving to one or two organizations, maybe, I'd probably just keep writing those checks, because I'm not also getting a lot of gift receipts when I file my taxes, when I want my deduction. So a lot of people like the charitable checkbook because maybe they're given to 4, 5, 6, 10. We've got some people who give to 40 different organizations. Well, when they put whatever asset into the donor advised fund, one gift receipt. So tax reporting just got a lot easier. So I'd like to say anybody that's given to 3 or more organizations, they might want to consider a donor advised fund just to simplify their life, because now one gift receipt, all the aggregated accounting done in one place.
Can I pause right there?
Sure.
Okay, so that makes a whole lot of sense. My question is, there is still the advisory fee for that fund. So are those funds growing? Like you wouldn't?
Oh, that's a great question. They can choose to do a couple different things. There's an interest-bearing account, which frankly is earning more than the cost. So it's kind of makes it, a cost-neutral conversation. There are underlying investment pools We call them the faith-driven pools. They've been screened for the kind of things we don't want in our portfolio and the kind of things we want in our portfolios, if we're going to look at that for more of a biblical worldview. So sometimes people will put some or part of those dollars to invest them to grow them a little bit over time, depending on when they need to send those dollars out or how much. And there's no right or wrong there. It really just is a function of what are their goals and objectives and what they've been called to do with it. Now, some people, it kind of goes in and goes out just as fast as it came in. Other people, they've got $30-40 million sitting there because they sold something that was very large and they don't know how to get it out the door that fast. And so then they will invest that as well. So there are a lot of different growth opportunities, or they may ask their financial advisor to manage that for them as well, which we allow them to do.
So when the money goes in and out so quickly, is there an advisory fee on that? So if I want to give the home
only for the time that it's been sitting inside the donor advised fund. So it's usually pretty minimal.
Okay.
Now, if somebody's, giving $100, $200 a month, they're probably just going to keep doing it the way they're doing it. There is an advantage when you have the non-liquid asset or that complex asset. And we probably do, we did about, like I said, $1 billion of gifts just last year with people who were giving, some type of non-liquid asset. So the other reason that somebody would come to somebody like NCF is because we just do so much of it and we know what we're doing. Now, I say that humbly. I don't want to act like we know it all, but we probably do more of that complex non-liquid gift than anybody in the country. And we're one of the very few that will actually let them hold it and leverage it. Most just want it sold because they don't want the ongoing work. But we're just going to do whatever we got to do to get it to the destination that God's called it to. I have our donor advised fund to send a check to our church every month. I have cash going in every 2 weeks automatically. So that's part of what's nice. It's just automatic. And then depending on what's going on, I'll either on a one-time basis dump more cash in, or I'll move some of my publicly traded securities. I've already used the real estate that I had for a gift, so I don't have any more passive income real estate assets. So I've done what I'm talking about personally. So there's where we just come alongside people and say, hey, let's figure out what makes sense for you based on what's going on, because that's the key. See, most people have some type of financial strategy. Now, like I'll even say, my daughter, who's a nurse up in Chicago, this is her second year up there, her financial strategy is to try to spend less than she makes, okay? It's not any more complicated than that, but sometimes we have simple, sometimes complex financial strategies. What we see is most don't have a giving strategy. And so very simply, what that means is they probably aren't aware. No one's ever shared with them some of these ideas. So they're wasting money on taxes and missing opportunities. And so regardless of where their peg in the ground is, our opportunity is to help them think about different ways that they could be more intentionally impactful with the dollars that they've been entrusted. And it's a lot of fun. Helping people give it away, it's a blast.
What are some of the more extravagant things you've seen given away asset-wise?
Well, here's some of the things that we don't see a lot of would be artwork, as an example, because the rules for artwork are very different. So you might sometimes think of that as extravagant. One of the most unique things I did was I helped a group give away $600,000 of silver bars. And I had no idea how much metal that was until I had to go up and witness the purchaser pick them up. I had to take pictures, made to verify that it happened, right? Well, it was 2 big pallets stacked about 3 foot high. We needed a forklift to put them into the utility van that was moving them. But there were tax advantages to, how they sold that metal, right? The silver bars, before they took constructive receipt of the proceeds. They gave it to charity. There's not a whole lot of assets that you can't consider. Now, the assets that don't make sense would be assets that are worth less than what you paid for them originally.
Like cars?
Like a car. Now, collectible cars, right? Different story. But typically the depreciating asset, people will still give them away. And then there's a lot of great organizations that will take the used vehicle. What we're primarily focused on is that asset that has appreciated over time. It's worth more today than when they purchased it originally, because that's when you can avoid that capital gains tax, the tax on the value having gone up. That's where a lot of leverage comes in the tax part of the conversation.
One question that we had, kind of stepping back from specifically NCF, is what are some of the trends you see in philanthropy or charity right now?
People are continually being more discerning about where they're granting their money. It used to be a heart-led only conversation because they had a relationship or a cause that they were drawn to. And that's still a big component. But what we're seeing now is people being more and more discerning of the next steward, if you will. In other words, how are they using those dollars? Because they want to be more understanding of the actual impact or results or outcome that's taking place from where they've sent those dollars. The second part of that is we see people more and more involved beyond the giving with those organizations they're supporting, which I think are all good things, because it kind of just raises the bar for everybody to say, let's do this with excellence. Because if we're not having an impact, if we're not solving a problem, well, then what are we doing, right? If something's not going to be better as a result of either our time or our talent or our treasure and how we've utilized it, well, then let's figure out either someone else can do it or there's a better way to do it. But those would be the things that I would say jump out at me first and foremost is people's discernment, and two, some of their greater participation. They become more owners of those organizations, not just contributors.
Yeah. Is that comes from they spend too much money on administrative costs and people just want to make sure that their money is going to
that's
an
interesting question, because a lot of times some of the things that some organizations do are going to be high in administration, right? Because they're employing the people that are providing the service. So, you depending on how you might categorize that expense, is that an administrative expense or is that a program expense?
Mm-hmm.
And so while the 10% that we're usually told on administration, don't be more than 10, well, it's a place to start. I'd never finish there. I'd say you really got to get under the hood and really understand the construct of the organization and how they're set up and how they're working, and then how are they measuring the impact or the results. So it's part of what you look at, but I don't know that it's everything.
Yeah. It's probably got a bad rap, I feel like. People just use that.
Well, it's been part of it. It's been good to help create more transparency, right? That is important, right? And there's a lot of things that we teach people to do, how to read a 990, which is the tax form that a nonprofit files, right? How do you read that to say, well, they're going to file this. Let's look at it and understand how they're utilizing cash. How are they spending it? What are their expenses? Because that's all has to be reported. And some people want to really deep dive on that. Some people just want to go, at a high level. It's not good, bad, right, or wrong. Everybody's got a different way as to how they want to think about it.
Yeah. Next question I have is, what is one of the most proudest accomplishments or impacts that you've had, someone that you've served?
I don't know that I'd use the word proud, but I would say that there's probably one every day. And what I mean by that is that everybody's called to support something different. Not everybody's all focused on the same thing. And so I say that because we're able to help people where God's got them. And so for as many people as we serve, there are that many different goals and objectives, or what I refer to as burdens that God's placed on their heart to do what it is they want to do. So, really very simply, our job is to be what I call in a hurry to get in the back of the line. And we're not called to be first, we're called to be last. So let's be in a hurry to get in the back of the line. And whoever's sitting in front of us, let's just help them get whatever they've got, whether we got people who have millions and billions, and we've got people that don't have a lot. It doesn't matter to us. God's put a calling on your heart. Let's help you get it there. So that's kind of where I'd say we kind of get to do that every day. Now, sometimes we get to see the results of that. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes the impact is big. Sometimes it's small. We're really not in charge of the outcome. We're just in charge of helping people figure out how to get it there.
Any more thing we need to know about NCF we haven't covered yet?
Well, part of NCF Ohio, and part of the reason we have Tom down here is that, yeah, I can get down here, but not like he can, right? And so we just want to have, by creating a proximity, we can create presence, because the other part of what we do, while we've talked a lot about helping people move it, we are working very hard to lift generosity in all parts of Ohio. So Tom's our vice president of Southwest Ohio. So as he is working in Cincinnati and certainly here in Wilmington and Dayton, how can we help people think differently about what they've been entrusted? When people move from a position of scarcity to abundance, they live a much freer life. And I don't know, I wasn't called to give it all away. I still got, money in the bank. I only read of one guy that was called to give it all away in the Bible, right? But we are called to do more with what we've been entrusted. And so we've got Ashley Schaefer up in Northwest Ohio serving that part of the state. We got Elias Husney up in Northeast Ohio serving kind of the Cleveland, Akron, Canton, Youngstown. I'm in Central Ohio with Melissa and Susie as part of our team. So that culture of generosity is a big part of what we're trying to impact, as well as the strategic tactical. So I kind of call it the below the shoulder conversation, which is the why and the where. When you think differently about who the owner is, you behave very differently. The where is, where does he want you to take it? We help people think that through. The above the shoulder piece, strategic tactical, how do you do it and what can you do to be more effective and more efficient? And that's where we bring that expertise as well. So I think that's another differentiator for NCF is that, at the core of this, it's not about how much we move. It's about how we help people change how they think about what they've been entrusted.
That kind of leads into my next question about how this impacts Wilmington. So maybe Tom can answer this question, but why is what you do at NCF important for our community and what keeps you passionate about it?
I think the big thing is that people aren't giving to NCF, they're giving through us. So they're still going to be able to support those charities that they love.
That's right.
So that money can stay here in Wilmington if that's where they want it to go. But we're just that conduit to help them do what's best for what they've been entrusted with.
I like that. It's good. What's a quote or a piece of wisdom that's helped guide you that you would want to share with other people?
Psalm 24:1. The earth is the Lord's and everything in it, and the world and all who live in it. So I think that pretty much covers everything that we're going to get our hands on, whether it's the time that we're taking sitting here today, this body that I've been entrusted, how do I care for that? Certainly it speaks to our finances, the relationships that we have. We talked about kids. Those kids aren't ours. I'm just a temporary dad. I'm just the dude here taking care of them because they've been entrusted to me. The real owner is up in heaven, And so when you shift that understanding, the real truth behind that Psalm 24:1, it just causes you to behave in ways that you never thought you would. And the joy that comes from that, big deal. And that impacts everything I do then. Everything I do when I go, it's not mine, it's his. What does he want me to do with it? I behave very differently. And I had to learn how to get there. And I haven't figured it all out yet either, I can assure you.
Thomas. Yeah. Do you have a quote or a piece of wisdom even that you live by that you'd want to share with other people?
Yeah, actually a couple. One actually came from Trey Gowdy, if you're familiar with Trey on Fox News, former attorney for the U.S. He signed a photo for me that said, "Chance favors the prepared mind." That was actually a Louis Pasteur quote. So I live by that, but also in 1 Corinthians, run so that you may attain it. Really, that it goes back to that competitive nature of mine, but really reach for that end goal.
Those are good quotes.
Yeah.
Good things. Be prepared and maybe keep going. Yeah. Love it. What's a positive change that you'd like to see in our community? And Dwight, maybe you can speak to more general Ohio than just Wilmington.
Well, I think it goes back to what I kind of shared a few minutes ago with that Psalm 24:1. I believe that when you think differently about what you've been entrusted, and it's an upside down world, we live in the right side up world that says accumulate and attain as much as you can. But when you turn that upside down and you think very differently about that, then all of a sudden, sometimes less is more. And we don't have time to break that out, but we really, for any community that we're serving, we genuinely want to see hearts change in such a way that that radical change of behavior lifts a community up, right? Because it's not about me anymore. It's about you or somebody else or us. And what can we do? Because we also are taught, a cord of 3 strands is a lot stronger than just one. Or a phrase that we have in a group that I'm part of, we just simply say 2 is 1 and 1 is none. So, how can we collaborate more together to serve those who need it? When I'm making it about them, not about me, I have a tendency to be a little more freer with how I think about what I've been entrusted, whether it's time or my talent or my treasure or my relationships or my resources, whatever that may be. So how do we lift it?
Tom, I have the same question for you. What's a positive change? You've been in Wilmington for a while, so what's a positive change you think would be good for Wilmington?
Positive change for Wilmington. I think that the movement of generosity that's not only just here in Wilmington, but throughout the country is gaining momentum.
Mm-hmm.
I really would love to see that become a major thing, not a minor thing, but a major thing in Clinton County, in Wilmington, so that people can support those causes that they want, and we can help them do that.
I like what Dwight said earlier about a trend in charity is not only giving more like you were saying, Tom, but getting more involved with the organizations that you're giving to. Be good.
The interesting part about that is you talk to anybody when they get involved with something, they go on a mission trip. It's fascinating how almost to a person you always hear, boy, I got more out of that than I put into it. And they put a lot into it, right? But it's just amazing what that does for the soul when you're actually participating beyond just the donation, if you will.
Yeah, I think it's good for people to, exercise, eat healthy, sleep well, and to give to other people. It just feels good. Like those things feel good when you do them.
Scripture's pretty clear. It's what it tells us. We just have a hard time paying attention sometimes.
We just neglect that aspect of life, giving to others, being others focused. Like you said, we're too busy accumulating for ourselves.
That's right. And that doesn't mean we're not supposed to.
Sure.
But there is that tension to figure out how do we do that in such a way. And I guess that's part of where we're blessed to be able to help people think that through.
Yeah. Thanks for being here to share that message and to help people do that. How can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more?
So ncfgiving.com is the website that we have for our national organization. You can go to the contact page there and find all our local resource. And of course, we're listed there with all our contact information, so people are free to use that. And given that Tom lives here, they'll probably see him walking down the street at some point all the time he spends here in the southwest part of the state.
Very cool. Well, thank you guys for your time.
Good to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
Well, that's it for our podcast today, folks. I hope you enjoyed our interview with Tom Dreyer and Dwight Montgomery with the National Christian Foundation. If you have more questions for them or ideas, please feel free to reach out directly. If they'll talk to us dorks, they'll certainly talk to you as well, because after all, we are a community of empowered individuals. If you want to get in touch with Real Change Wilmington to share your story, you can contact us on our website, realchangewilmington.com, visit our Facebook or Instagram pages, or grab a free copy of our local newspaper at Kroger, Sam's Meats, and Fiesta Veracruz. We also currently send our free local newspaper direct mail to over 2,500 Wilmington residents every month. So if you want to help us cover our printing costs and advertise your local business, event, or job posting, email us at advertise@realchangewilmington.com. With that, I'm your host, Dustin Pierce. Keep it real, Wilmington.